Okay, so I think the video is running. I will maximize this. So these are, I did some collections of venues and fans, um, shows and artists. And I have some queries that I've pre-done here that we can go through and check. But I think I'm going to do this mostly in the command line, partially because it works really well there. And there are some of the complications. It took me a long time to figure out how to enter a complex body in the Compass, and I have not figured out how to enter a complex query in there. Although I'm sure you can, I just haven't figured out how. There's another GUI for Mongo called RoboT, which is actually better. Should have you guys download it at some point, but
Do you have this available for us?
it is if you want it. So I just don't want you to take it as law and not overwrite what you guys did. So it is available under files. And it's available as simple or show tracker JSON text. You can't do it. You can't, like, if I copy it, open it here. If you copy and paste from here, it'll fail. You need to download it. So once you've downloaded it, you want to open it in Notepad. So if you want this one, again, make it a different database than Show Tracker, maybe. Make it Show Tracker 2 or Show Tracker Alt, right? Because a lot of yours, I think, are just as good, and I'd like you to try out yours as opposed to mine necessarily. So once you've downloaded it, then open it in Notepad, and it'll be in the download folder. Just right-click and then open with Notepad. So I want to move that. I have also, let me close these. I have also done the Mongo. Let me zoom up for those. So remember we made those shortcuts. So I also loaded MongoD. So that's the thing. It's just waiting for a connection. So you just sort of close it. Don't close it, but minimize it. And then I'm going to do Mongo. This is the command shell. I'm also going to unzoom because I already made the font on this really big. Okay, so what I want to do is, as I said, just show you a little bit where you go after you got it. And I did 3 or 4 records for each of these, and that's kind of what I want you to do, is just 3 or 4 records for each. So I'm going to use Show Tracker. And again, if you want to name it something else, so it doesn't overwrite what you're doing, you know. So I'll actually name it Show Tracker B. So it switched to Show Tracker B. And basically, as I've said before, that actually creates the database, although it'll go away if you don't do anything more, right? Because it basically, once you've added things to it, then it stays as a database. Does that work? Yeah.
Do you want us to do a new one?
What do you mean a new one? A new?
For this notes, you just want us to do Show Tracker B?
Yeah, just go ahead and do Show Tracker B. I just don't want you to overwrite yours. Yeah. So I'm going to do db.venues .insert. And the way I have done this, and you don't have to do it this way, I have the parentheses to the parentheses. So I'm just going to copy that, and then I paste. All right, and if I press enter, it inserted 4. Right? So if I do db.venues, let's make that up a little higher, .find, it will return all of those. And I could make it pretty if I want, but it fits on the screen better this way. It's really, it's pretty easy just to, I would advise structuring them in Notepad and then copying it over like this.
So which one we're doing?
I did venues. The first one, collection venue. This says collection venues, but I named it venue, but I said venues. Don't copy the collection venue. You just want from here to here. And my venue, if you look at it, let's just do, before I do the next one, DB venues, find, and I'll do a pretty, and we'll just look at one of them. So there's the Paramount. I gave it the ID. I actually gave it a word, which it works as long as you override the ID. You can do whatever. I gave an address. That's not his actual address, but city, zip code, email, URL, restrictions, and I did the genres of the type of music they do there as an array. And again, a lot of you have better structures. I'm not saying that this is an ideal structure. It's just what I did. And I did it like a year ago, so I've been rethinking a little bit some of what I did because it's still a little bit relational in my mind the way I structured it. All right, so that's what I did with those. So I'm going to do db.fans.insert, and you don't have to do this, but if you want to follow, it might be good for just seeing the kinds of things. So these are the fans, and I'll do Control C. Same thing. I actually had the parentheses too, and I'll just press Enter, and it inserts 6. And I'll just do real quickly db.fans.find. Pretty, and we'll look at one just so you can kind of see it. So I let them get a random number. I gave them a name. I gave an email, what artists they want to follow, and what genres they want to follow. So some people, I think I've only got one genre there. Up here, me, there's Bob Dylan, Neil Young of Monsters and Men and Lord. So somebody else did Lord too. So does that make sense, sort of? I'm not saying, as I said, that this is the best, but this is what I did. All right, so I'm going to do shows. And again, it's the same pattern. And again, you can do this on your own. The nice thing is if things fail, it's a lot easier to edit them in Notepad. So if I do db shows .find, there are actually no parentheses because I've got the parentheses there. And I don't want find, I want insert. And then we're almost done with this part. Okay, so for the show, okay, let me move that up a bit. What I have for the show is the names of the show, the random ID, artist, if there's more than one, it's an array, the venue ID, which is arena, the date, the time, and the very minimal about tickets. Questions on that? And then the very last is artists. So maybe more important than figuring out exactly what my content would be just the process. You can type all of this directly into here. It's just that if you have an error, it's a pain to correct.
See,
Yeah.
well, I do this because it's hard to use the shell. Is I'll do something like DB something that's just take up space because then I'm going to send that there. That way I can easily go up and down and then put in my shows or whatnot.
You could, yeah. So you can do the up arrow gives you your last command. Down arrow takes it away. I think there are some other commands, shell commands. We should look in the help and see what they are. There's also, as I said, the Mongo website. The documentation is actually really good, and especially if you search it. What you search tends to come up, and it tends to be actually related to what you're searching for. It's a pretty good search. So that's all of the collections. I think I showed you before. You can do show collections, and it will show you what your collections are. It's a really fairly intuitive command. You can also show databases if you want to see what databases are on the server. And we've got test, admin. Now we've got config, which is a system one. Local, which is always our admin is system. We've got cookie cow from last time. And this is show tracker B. So just show collections, show databases. That's useful when you can't remember what you named things. Okay, so I'm going to do some simple queries. Are you guys ready? Okay, let's see. Yes, no.
How about wait for Chris? He's the one who's not going to use that computer. He is the one for me.
What? Error. What is the error? Looks like there's a parenthesis missing. So if you're going to do all of these venues at once, you could do them all at once, but you need to put a square bracket in front of it and a square bracket in there and a comma between it. If I go back, so notice there's a comma at the end of each of these after the curly brace, and then there's square brackets around them. If you're going to enter multiple records, you have to do the square brackets. You don't do the square brackets if you're only inserting one. And if you're inserting multiples, they all have to have commas after each record, except for the last one. And those are the things that'll screw you up most often. Are you ready, you think? Okay. So this is mostly just to orient you, and I can help you as you go on. I'm not too worried about, there are some questions that I asked. I forget what they were. One of them was what artists a fan is following, and then what shows have those artists. There's no way to make that join, but you can do it as two queries, right? So let's do, I'm trying to think, what do I want to show here? What did I show here? I was trying to not refer to this. Oh, this is if you wanted to follow our of Monsters and Men, but let's do somebody else. So you always start with DB, right? That's your database context. My throat is scratchy for some reason. If you can't hear me, let me know. And then we're going to do the collection, right? So it's fans. And then it's always find. But what we've been doing is just looking for, when you do the empty parentheses, you're basically saying select star from. You're saying return everything. So this time we're going to do one where the artist, and I think it's artists and fans, right? Those are shows. I'm just looking up here. Artists. That's another hard part, is just knowing. And let's just do Bob Dylan. I have like 30 Bob Dylan albums, which I know is a bit excessive. All right, so what this is, notice it's kind of like, it's basically JSON again. You're saying what the name of the key is, and then what the value is that you're searching for. Does that make sense? So when I press enter, it returns, let's make it pretty. I'll do it again and make it dot pretty. Wonder why they decided to just, okay, so it's me, right? Bob Dylan, so I'm the only one following Bob Dylan. But we're looking for Bob Dylan, and notice it found it in the list, right? Even though it's part of an array, it found it in the list without having to do anything special. If you were doing this in Python or C#, you'd have to loop through the list to find if it was there and check to see for a match. This you don't have to. It just automatically searches the lists. And if it's in the list, it'll bring it back, right? So you don't have to do any looping or things like that. So if I wanted to see any shows that had Bob Dylan in them, it would be find, and the parentheses again, curly brace. So I'm looking for shows. I'm having trouble remembering. So a show has a show name. Let's do the show name and the date. Well, let's just do all of it. And I'll show you how you can limit your fields in a moment. So I'm going to say artist, and we'll do Bob Dylan. Close the curly braces, close that, and it'll show me, and I should have done it pretty probably. Again, the up arrow returns the last. So there's a show at the arena, I guess. What if we only wanted to see the show name and the date? For this one, you'd probably want to see all of it, but just to show you how to select. So I just did the up arrow to get the same thing here. I'm going to use this arrow to come in here. I'm going to do a comma, another curly brace, and I'm going to do show name, :1. Then we'll do date, :1. And we don't want to see the key, so I'm going to say _ID, :0. So when I run this one, and I have to move the arrow to the end. What is it? Oh, I didn't close it. Okay. I didn't close the curly brace. And that needs to go away. Now what did I do? I got the date, but I didn't get the show. Why didn't I get the show? What?
The show name is Channel Case.
Is it? Well, that's actually good to show you. It's case sensitive, which can drive you nuts too. There we go. So it gives the show name, the date. So one of the things you can do is you can, the second set of curly braces is basically saying what fields do you want to see. 1 means you want to see it. 0 means you don't want to see it. But basically what happens is that it assumes 0 unless you say 1 when you have the second parenthesis. So it assumes you don't want to see them unless you explicitly call them out, with the exception of the ID. The ID is always assumed that you do want to see it, so you have to actually do a 0 there. Does that make sense? But you can choose what fields you want to see. All right, so if I was following Bob Dylan, and this is I found a show that you had Bob Dylan in it. That was basically the essence of that. But I had to do 2 queries. There's no table joins, right? So let's see which artists or which fans follow alternative, and then we'll look for alternative artists and maybe look for shows by those artists. Does that make sense? You can get really sophisticated with this, and we're not going to, but I just want you to know that you can ask all sorts of really complex questions. There's all sorts of built-in functions to help you do that. There's all sorts of aggregate functions if you need to count things or average things or total things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do here. There's a reason why this stuff is popular. You can actually do a lot of big data here. And you can also export this to like Python and do some analysis and things like that. So we're asking kind of dumb little questions, kind of like we did before, but I just wanted to let you know you can ask sophisticated questions of this. But it's all in JSON, so it's a little bit weird. Takes a while to get used to. So if we want to know which fans, so I'm going to do fans find. So the first thing is the criteria. And I'm going to do genre and alternative. And again, if I've got my case wrong, this will screw up. And we want to see, what do we have in fan? Probably faster to look here. Let's do just their name and email. So I want to see name, :1, email, :1, and we won't see the ID, :0. Close the curly brace, close that. And let's do pretty. It didn't go. What did I leave out? Did I spell alternative differently? Did I spell genre? It's genres. All right.
Just do Control A. Puts it back to the beginning line, right?
Yeah, well, I could probably just do end also for to get the end. There we go. So these people are all saying that they want to follow alternative. It's one of their genres, right? Does that make sense? So let's look at what artists are alternative. And again, it's a little bit cumbersome compared to SQL because you can't join these things. So I am going to, so we'll basically just do db.artist.find. And I believe, is it an artist? Its genre is there too, I think. Do we want to see everything about them, or do we just want to see? Let's just see everything. See which artists there are. We'll do it as pretty. What did I leave out? What?
It's gotta be capital A.
Capital A for alternative. Yes. There we go. So we've got Death Cab for Cutie, Of Monsters and Men, Lord, Daughter, Metro, and Pearl Jam. Some of them have alternative pop or rock, that kind of thing. You could quibble with my genre things. So one of the things, and I might just copy this, these are all the different artists. I wanted to show there's a way that you can do all of these together. And I could work this out by just typing it, but I'm going to copy it. Oops. So notice the $or. So the $or is a function, and it's basically or. You've got also like $and. Is it PHP that uses the $sign for variables? So does this. A lot of the functions and variables have a $sign at the beginning. So this is a $sign or, and then we create an array where we say the artist is Of Monsters and Men, or the artist is Death Cab for Cutie, or the artist is Pearl Jam, or the artist is Daughter, or the artist is Metro. Close the array, close the query, basically the or query, and then close the parentheses. So this should return all the shows. Maybe we want to do that pretty too. These are the shows that have those. So there's Of Monsters and Men, and there's a Pearl Jam show, which I guess Pearl Jam was playing recently, weren't they? Or they are playing in the near future, one of the two. Okay. So there are lots of other queries you could do. I'm not expecting you to, but there are, and you can play with it if you want. Let me just real quickly show you what the assignment says. It varies a little bit on what you did, right, for your database. So if you got different things, you may have to ask different queries. The pattern, I think, is simple enough. You know, what you're looking for key-wise, and then value, key value, just what you're looking for. So let me close this. Go to Probably modules. Go to the last module. This is sample data and tests.
That's MySQL.
Oh, it's MySQL. Thank you. Why does modules trade places on different screens? Mongo, database and collections. Oh, so this one is just creating, just putting data in. Didn't I ask for queries too?
It's just below that.
What?
It was just below that when you clicked on.
Oh, okay. So one assignment is just putting the data in and taking a picture. Let's go back to the modules. I can't tell what's in what order there. Yeah, test queries. So I didn't ask very many questions. Choose a genre, what artists are considered to be in that genre, what fans follow those artists, what shows exist for those artists, and what are all the shows for a particular venue. If your database can't answer that because of the structure, maybe ask a little bit different question if you need to. And I can help you with that. Questions? I think what I'm going to do is come around and talk to the different groups, although there's not a lot to talk about, but we could talk if you have questions about yours. And then, as I said, what you want is about, so what have I've averaged, I had a lot of artists, but most of these are like 4 to 5 records. That's plenty. I just want you to have the experience of trying to enter something into this. And then see what kind of questions you can ask, whether they're the ones I asked you to ask or not. But do turn in what questions you ask. As I said, it's just a matter of doing this. I would, if you ever get a chance, this is something you could play with some more. Mongo works really well with Python if you ever want to play with that. It works pretty well even with C# or any other language. The drivers are pretty simple to use. And it's become, the NoSQL databases are growing rapidly in the marketplace. So it's something you're likely to encounter again. Questions? Yeah.
When you say those issues about security,
There are issues with security about Mongo, although supposedly they've been dealing with them a little bit. So we might deal with that a little bit. When you do Mongo, let's see which one is the, so when you go into, I'm just going to show databases, show DB. Shuam won't do it. So there's an admin database. When you're doing security, what you have to do is go into the admin database, create users and assign permissions, all in JSON, which is a little bit tricky. The thing is that most people, one of the reasons why it has security problems, most people don't do that. Most people have been running, and me included, although I haven't put mine out where it's available to the world, most people just run with the default security settings.
So it's not really a true issue. We just have it going on.
I'm not sure. I know it was pretty heavily compromised, but Mongo said that it was because people didn't implement the security, which is possible. SQL Server used to have a reputation for being really insecure, and it wasn't true. It was because Microsoft shipped it with everything wide open, right? It shipped it with basically everything turned on, because they figured that the administrator would go and turn off the things they didn't want. That didn't work because they tended to just leave everything wide open, and so people could attack it. They would leave like default passwords. SA system administrator would have a password. and nobody had ever bothered to change it. So, it's pretty easy to attack. So what Microsoft did, and I think what they may end up doing with Mongo, is that they ship with everything shut off. And you have to go in and turn on the features that you want, which is a lot safer way to do it. More painful for the administrator, but a lot safer. Yeah. Okay, are we okay for what there's several different little assignments here, basically.
Get up. So we did so we did 2 months on constellation.
You did a lot, but that's okay since you've already done
Yeah, so essentially we had collection, we had show events,
Right.
show venues, users, reviews, artists, and just basically just did that stuff and then got it through. And
Yeah.
checks out, and you can check it out on the, and I ran through on the Google.
Yeah, I did look at yours. I saw that you'd already installed it.
Okay. Yeah. So is there any feedback for our group?
No, I think actually just fine. We've actually got a couple of assignments. So we actually installing them as individuals, so you might want to share the script or you might want to share it.
Okay. Well, I think I sent you guys a mail for the script, right?
We need more monitoring.
So you guys are ready.
Say,
Yeah, the JSON, yes.
So you guys are ready to get
You
through.
guys run the group though.
I don't.
Okay. Alright, so maybe get some voting resubmitted then,
I could check. If you want to resubmit it, I could do it. I think you'd already resubmitted it.
but it's only for document. I think just look again. Does it update the group?
It doesn't update, it updates the groups, it doesn't necessarily update the grades.
Okay, I'll update it. I'll submit it again, so. Okay, so I got it. Yeah. So now we know how you can access. Oh, it's different color. Jim and stuff. And well, fish out of water, so try to institute computers and or we can. Hey, Chris. Oh, no, so this is where I think we do things with rock. I'm interested in my home. You don't have a computer for this. Yeah, you're the only one who can get Okay, so going back to the assignment, so first I'm gonna go read some of that.
It's, so when I'm doing those, I don't know necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't.
Right, so we kind of got that for free, so you have to do this individually, but it's basically what I've already did, so we'll get points for this. So I'll just open the election here. And
So I'd like to see, yeah, no, you guys are just doing the key card. One of the things that,
let me make sure you got.
collections maybe just make sure, we got what you think we need to know. And if there's any like stuff.
Yeah, see how it's going now? stuff that I would include in the decks. Yeah, I just wanted to tell them. Vendors.
Yeah, you just you wanted a description of the venue, maybe the URL, and then marketing and for the users writing. The shop.
Right, yeah, that would be just for that. The idea is if you have, even though it's pretty open,
Letter
you
of
have a
your
description.
description.
Just make sure you can do
So basically that's what, so that's what I'm gonna reach. Basically it's like, hey, so you copy and paste this stuff here. So you just insert it one at a time.
Yes,
The way I did it.
it was same as how you
I
want
went
it
through
there.
how, I have here the log, so also what it is, I went further, it's like, once I get back here, I did the log, I'm showing, hey, this is what you see in the module. So you could use this, yeah. I like Linux and Shell, so let's look at my tutoring thing. Side 1148. I'm Linux is one of my wheelhouse. I'll remember, I've been telling people on Fridays and Saturdays from 9 to 6 I'll be here. This weekend, right? Just like the computer lab. Actually, I'm trying to tell you because you got the VMware here, which you don't have in the computer lab. And so you also, you got like other things like Java, and Stein's got several Java related classes you can use to clip, whatever to use that. So I got all that installed last week. On a bad machine. Yeah, so. Yeah, so that's what I did for this file. So that's all I'll resubmit for us. So you guys, thumbs up. Okay.
When I upload that to it.
Longo collection. So now, what that does is that'll take care of. So then that takes care of, so it needed to install, it's on budget. So we're all good. And then it's, this, what kind of did for you. So, so, but you'll have to go through yourself on your machine.
Yeah.
No, that's what we, yeah, that's what, so we kind of went ahead of the game, so he just wanted to, so we just went further. And so that's, so we got 2 assignments done that one. And so actually it's free, because he just reviewed it. So, yeah, he might actually be done. So I think he already done it. So it's just a matter of how we do the test queries. And for this one, I would think go with the class notes, because it'd be easier to do. It'd be easier just to go with his structure, because there's only the assignment. So then we have to go. So that's the way I look at it. Right? Right? What do you need? Okay. Okay.
So if you're gonna do more than one at a time, you have to do the brackets. So you do the parentheses bracket and the local bracket. And then close the bracket. I think you might have to have almost the brackets.
So I just, if you don't see
Yeah,
anything.
so click on file extensions, now it shows you this is Mongo. These Mongo. It's hard to see. That's what probably happened.
Sometimes,
See? See, you click on it, there's a difference there. Yeah.
yeah.
And you can do things like,
Yeah. Because a hidden tab is a hidden character that it doesn't have to do. Yeah. Are you done? Yeah.
Doing all right.
Yeah, so.
I think yours was fine.
Yeah.
Oh, just a couple.
Yeah, here's the main description of
Oh, right, yeah.
the menu.
But most of them.
Oh, you're doing it live.
Real quick, while you're here,
Yeah.
curious about the.
So you got a 5 there.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
So if you did, that is a mistake.
Okay.
I would never give you take points off without comment.
Gotcha.
So what it means is in the rubric,
Yeah,
I accidentally didn't get one of them marked.
gotcha. Yeah, I checked the rubric and it showed this.
So I just
So-
forgot to put a 5.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because they both say good. I wouldn't
Yeah.
take it off 5 points if they're both wrong. So
Thank
And you were pleased and then going to it for broken card time.
I'm gonna turn this off just for the bulb's sake. Also, because I'm gonna go in and change grades. Which is, that was the MySQL one, right?
It's kind of like Gooey, the compass, so it's got some weird job.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Okay. Don't worry about it.
What is the job?
The JavaScript.
So it's just
So just don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, descriptions.
Okay, so that's why. No waste of time.
Yeah.
I can debug it and only get that kind of stuff. Right, so anyway, now you're in the shell. So that's what I'm using.
All right.
Yeah, so the best way to do it is go to email, put it into a text file. And if you get hung up, you don't always go back and back to the, none of you say it's just that. Other day I go too fast. I see that whole jail.
So boss, is that it? Is that it for the day?
If you're done, yeah.
Yeah. Well, wait, that's,
You guys, yeah, we're way ahead.
yeah, so the one thing is about, even though I was late getting in yesterday and you had the confusion of me locking in all, nothing was locked. Everyone could log in, right? Just looked odd. Aaron Lewis is everywhere. But you had no updates, right, to deal with, the dreaded updates.
We shouldn't have had,
It would've-
because you,
Yeah, it was one of the things that we're doing now, right? For 2 quarters. We should have been doing, last 2 quarters instead of the last 2 weeks of the
what did,
quarter.
you went through and made sure that they
Yeah,
updated?
well, I was doing the update for Eclipse and Java JDK, so that, once Donnie has that last assignment there, people can come, because they don't have Eclipse over in 1148. So I bet you I could download it there. but-
Eclipse is something you could download even on, when you have no permissions, because it doesn't
Oh, so I thought you,
install.
so you don't have admin permissions to do that?
You don't have to, because it floats on the Java.
Oh, okay. So
Runtime.
all you gotta do is unzip it.
It doesn't install into,
The main core, like a JDK. So the JDK, you do that.
that needs it, right, but It basically just runs on the Java runtime, so
Mhm.
it doesn't install into the registry. So there's no permissions
Those guys had all
needed.
the stuff.
Here was talking about putting more some courses over there. What? They, so this machine here that he's on, it's only have ad, it's only have ad access. It's more like there. Yeah. It's only got admin going in. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so he's one of the tech guys, so I was wondering if there's some reason. Try to get a long catch that. Yeah, well, now what it is, like, one second. It'd be nice if someone like me, someone else would have been here. We've had outs. So we shouldn't do that. It's Friday, Saturday, not during lecture time. Okay, let's go, let's go, sure. Yeah, I wasn't hard. I mean, I wasn't nice. Just we shot it. We shot it. Yeah, so it's very long. Okay, so just send a ticket. Yeah. Copy later. They got Oh, yes.
So other groups, how are you guys doing? So the collections is, create the database.
Okay. So it's not gonna be in this section.
The review are.
Sorry. Oh, well. What's the class in the office?
So if you want to do it as a group, if you want to.
Because we gotta just put the thing there, because until.
You can't do it in this hierarchy, you can only do the one, as far as I understand. Or you can do like.
It's still trying to database only. That database. Yeah. Other users can use it. It says, let it grab.
Yeah.
No, it says a security database it doesn't trust. It doesn't allow other users to get in there.
You probably did that on purpose.
Let me repeat.
Trying to query the entire thing.
Almost done.
Oh, yes, that's a screenshot.
I don't know why. You do actually want them to keep track of the differences in services. So that one is good. So I think it's not a bad
Oh,
That's one else. Trust relationship.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? It's a problem.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but he's only gonna fix that, right? Yeah. No, they don't know. I can't believe Okay. All right, well, so I'll add that to your. Yeah, it's in that. You said it for this one.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Eli.
No problem, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, you were actually ahead.
I'm actually ahead in one class.
Yeah. Which is fun, but it'll be a big one.
You have, I mean, have two machines.
Then it'll stay that, although keep it lowercase. Because then in the application, say that there is where I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Okay, thank you. We're not doing much.
Yeah. You could, I mean, there's lots of it right off of. So if you want to review, some people want to do for actually separate collection for venue reviews, that's like okay. We could, but just a review, maybe study or something, and say venue review. Yeah. Whatever makes sense to you. And then we can play with it, and if it doesn't make sense, we're not tired. So I can show you. Kind of like in, update changes in system records. So you can update it with this record. It is kind of like an actually parent. But you're right, yeah, sure, sort of. You have to do it by ID.
Yeah, that's unlikely.
You can copy paste from our from here from the tracker.
Depends on if it will work. So you can do that, but we're building our own. We're building our own.
That is,
That's an example.
that's just an example of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're building our own example of that. No, no, that's just so you can get practice and so you can make queries and stuff like that.
So you want to do, you're using the data. So the DB.
So you're creating your own.
Yeah, that's
So
what
what
we're
is your
doing right now. So he's gonna be passing the queries to the rest of us through the Slack channel. And then we're gonna be able to insert that into our own, practice the queries. Yeah.
insert,
Get them.
just insert, and then open up. Well, actually, don't open it.
Yeah, so then
I'm not gonna be queries, that way.
So
You can get that
I'm just.
Oh, I know why.
doesn't work.
Oh. That's great. That one, that's one. Yeah, and then I got approved to do that. I kind of like, because it's just high rush day.
Right.
So the first one is just. The other one is.
And then make one. All right, so I can, this. Yeah, I know. If this is good enough, it's good enough.
Yeah. See, and it didn't take you
No, I mean.
So they have, module. So you can do some kind of and you can probably assign, values to the dates to essentially move an event on this page or an event on that page. And you have it in
Can I ask you? If I like to give all the numbers for the next 4 months. All the
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, you can probably do that. I just don't know exactly how yet. I'm still figuring out the date. It's been all right. I'm trying to get 5 different things in there. So I'm doing one. Writing actions, writing coding, creating tasks. And let's focus on doing all these things. That's just.
How are you doing?
He showed me access that he can't find his databases. His databases just don't leave, and I don't see a footprint of when they would have been deleted.
Where are they?
Like I said, given the number.
There were a couple people.
Are you having this in one language confirming?
He said.
These are just the examples from the, so
Okay. So that was
it's not comparing.
Yeah, I think that's part of the trust thing. It looked like a delivery shot.
And figure out first.
It's just.
This admin is the Yeah, I don't know. So David did reshoot a couple of machines.
He did,
I didn't know
Well,
that
he did like mine.
I see people, somebody going
Yeah.
around. So they're going around.
Aaron is logging all of them.
In like CPU, but
No, just
you
Dave.
can't really use it for anything.
So you're looking at the normal
Oh.
seconds, or you're looking
Yeah,
at how many-
essentially.
So it's not really-
But it, I mean, it does depend on what you're building. So if you build all of it, Python, then it could be. You know what that means? So that's why it's
But I'm just curious, you know, for the regular user, slowing in seconds and slowing in a couple of minutes.
It doesn't matter that
That
much,
is that.
but it,
What-
Are we so, for the review of it, we start entering and stuff?
No, you guys, I gave you. So I already gave you. I didn't do the,
Yeah.
so,
yeah, I didn't do the,
so a modern computer is able to render an entire 3D model. Right? And
this guy has so many assignments. You know, in terms of grading and what to do them.
do it.
Yeah.
Move it around.
I don't think they're hard assignments, it's just
Right, other one just.
Single move
Yeah.
of the mouse. It changes.
Yeah.
everything.
You're welcome to do that. Are they working for you?
Yeah.
To draw my face with a bunch of dots.
What I was having trouble
That's
with
how
it was when I needed a complex
Mind you,
sub
it's done
kind of
really
thing,
not optimal,
which I did figure out how to do.
but
Like you've got it there. Remember.
it took that long to draw a bunch of dots.
And
Whereas
here. it's
And then
kind
the
of-
complex
so
squares,
much more
I'm quite sure you can do all of them.
So
I just didn't. This is brand new to me too, so.
I'm sure there's ways to do this.
But yes, you're welcome to use it.
And if you have an, yeah, an environment, it would be way longer.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
For the assignment, is it just like what I literally just did, just as the
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's exactly what you did, just like screenshots of it.
Okay, for each individual one.
Yeah, I mean, just enough to let me know that you did it. So I already know you did it, so a couple of them will do.
And maybe that could be a good part.
Just to make sure I don't forget to give you the points, but I do know you guys did it. Oh, once again, the video has been running